panelists up here. We're a little bit early, but not much.
I get to sit here, get prepared. Great. We'll get more questions if you sit next to me. Great.
Give me a check on your mic, will you?
Check, check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Todd?
Check. Oh. Go ahead.
That's me,
Wait a
Kyle.
minute.
Check.
Your name's Kyle. He's Todd. Okay.
I got it now.
We got it. All right. Well, let's get started. First of all, welcome everybody to our first Advanced Farming, Advancing Life panel here at the 2018 Farm Progress Show. We're thrilled to have each one of you here. Now, first of all, I got to tell you, I'm joined by some excellent resources here with some great perspectives to share about the topic I'm sure that a lot of growers are thinking about every day right now, and that's smart agronomic decisions to help manage those margins out there on your farm. Now, everybody in the room knows that it's no secret with today's commodity prices, it's really tough on American farmers out there. Getting the most out of every acre and is more important than ever. The individuals on our panelists know that very well as they farm in addition to doing other things, and we're going to find out their perspectives, their advice, really to share with us today. They're going to go through some of the topics that we're going to talk about is protecting our yields, scouting in season, and also making the right decisions when it comes to crop protection products, and then open it up at the end. We're going to allow you to have your questions out there. So again, thanks for being with us. I always like to take just a little moment to introduce our panel. And today, first chair to my left here is Mr. Kyle Meece. He's a grower and a retailer from Illinois, and I understand you do a lot of plots on your farms, and as well as your customers. So let's just talk about that, a little bit of your background, Kyle. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, you betcha. So Kyle Meece, live and farm right around Champaign, Illinois, where the University of Illinois is. Have farmed my whole life with my father and my brother. We farm almost 3,000 acres, predominantly all corn and soybeans. And then, as Pam mentioned, I'm also actually just accepted a new role with the retailer I work for as an innovation agronomy lead. So, as she mentioned, do a ton of trials on our own operation at home, just trying to better understand the inputs that we're putting in and the return on investment that we're getting out of it, as well as I take that with many of the growers and customers that I work with, just to obviously have a better understanding of what's going on throughout our whole footprint that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. Well, thanks for being with us today. To his left is Mr. Todd Golly. He's a grower from Minnesota, as well as the co-founder of Aker. It's an in-season crop monitoring, also an autonomous scouting service. So Todd, tell us a little bit about your operation, and you've got all kinds of wisdom about this year's crop, I bet.
Yeah, we'll save that for a little bit here. But my name is Todd Golly. I'm from southern Minnesota. Work on a family farm. We've been in southern Minnesota about 120 years on the same land. We farm about 6,000 acres of corn and soybeans. My background is I'm an agricultural engineer from the University of Minnesota. We're an early adopter farm, so that's how I got into technology. We try technology before it works and then finally figure out how to use it on the farm. So, yeah, that's me.
All right. Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. Finally, we have Mr. Mike Weber. He's the principal scientist here at Bayer. And Mike, just tell us a little bit about your background, but also what you do for Bayer.
Yeah, you bet. Good morning, everyone. So, again, my name is Mike Weber. I'm a principal scientist. Essentially, within that role, we provide sales support, technology exchange to both retail and growers, and provide research and development on new technologies yet to come. I've been with Bayer 20 years from Indianola and basically cover the eastern part of the state.
All right, thanks a lot, Mike. Well, we're going to just jump right into it right now. We're going to start with our discussion here with our panel. First of all, I guess the thing I want to know about the 2018 growing season, what was the key lesson or observation about this season that you're really taking into 2019? Let's start with you, Kyle.
Want to start with me?
I'm going to start with him because I want to get into his cropping because this is unbelievable, and a lot of you guys can go ahead and kind of identify with that. So just tell me what's your most impressive thing in the year 2018.
Like most of us know, weather is still king. We struggled this year in Minnesota. We had 14 inches of snow the day we were supposed to start planting. 30 days later, it was 100 degrees. We had 4 inches of rain probably every 3 days for about 2 months. It's still raining when I left yesterday. There's about 90% of the acres are yellow. It's been a real struggle for us this year. So that's the big lesson is as hard as you try, the weather still seems to take over.
Yeah, and nobody wants to wish that on any farmer out here. I don't think I've ever thought about it, having 14 inches of snow and then turning around 30 days when I'm still in the planting season and it's already up to 100. So, Kyle, you got to feel kind of sorry for that guy, because that's not the case that you had in Illinois, right?
No, I'm going to liven this back up a little bit, because that's
just died right
overly
there.
depressing. But I should say, to reiterate what Todd said, weather is obviously crucial. We started off, had Easter Sunday, it snowed, trying to determine how many snows on Sunday we were going to have after that. As the old saying with rain, I think we had 4. Once we hit the end of April, it was go time. We had both planters rolling, trying to get corn and beans slammed in the ground as quickly as we possibly could. And really, it's been a pretty perfect environment from here on out. We've had rainfall, we've had some issues here and there, but for the most part, we're looking really good in the central part of Illinois. As I was looking at some of my trend data, my weather history, we've got areas that have 15 inches of rain less in one part of where we farm versus other, but we had a really good pollination season, and things are going to be good. Harvest should start here probably in the next couple of weeks, and I'm overly excited to see what comes out of the fields.
So I'm going to ask both of you kind of an additional question. What about the timing of your inputs as far as your herbicide, pesticides, those kind of things, fungicides? Obviously, Todd, yours had to be extremely difficult. Did you even have the crop planted to do any of those things, or was it too late by the time you got it planted?
Yeah, timing is obviously important in all the crop protection products, and that was very difficult for us this year. Fortunately, we were able to get on that pre-emergence herbicide and control the weeds, because that was the last time we were able to get in that field. We were able to use airplanes to spray some other crop protection products, but we were pretty good at hitting that timing that we wanted to, but we had to go to plan B or C or sometimes D because it just kept raining. So putting those out there at the right time up front was absolutely key. Otherwise, it would have been a complete disaster the rest of the season.
Tell me a little bit more about Aker and how you're using that to help you decide on some of the scouting needs that you have on your farm and for other farmers.
Yeah, in the past we've collected a lot of data, but then we sit over the winter, analyze that data, and try to make decisions for the next year. My company tries to bring that in season, so we monitor the crop for diseases, insects, other things like that. Try to turn that over in 24 hours so we can make that decision in season. And like you said, the timing of those products is so critical that when we find something in the field, we can make that decision and then get a return on investment very quickly.
So, Kyle, let me ask you this. What did you really find that you did in 2018 that was more on the ROI basis? What was something that was really, you think is going to be a great thing that you did that's going to add to the profitability on your farm?
Yeah, you betcha. So it's a multitude of things. Our main goal in our farming operation was number one, to be able to plant both crops at the same time. Because, when it comes to soybeans, we've been early adapters of that and trying to get out there and capture as much sunlight as we possibly can. I was always taught growing up that the longest day of the year, the 21st of June, is when we're going to start seeing flowering. We had beans flowering on the first part of June, and it was amazing to see that. And I think that was a key decision making in our operation that's going to maximize our yields in the end. As I ran through the growing season and compiling data from trials through the past, looking at different nitrogen applications, different fungicide, insecticide, herbicide applications. As we got to the later side, I think the fungicide applications are really standing out. And one of the biggest tools that I use, I've actually had the opportunity to work with Todd on some stuff and using climate, using Encirca, and looking at imagery. And I've got some big comparisons on different products of fungicide, and gray leaf spot is the worst I've ever seen it in my part of the state, probably ever. And my imagery showing that we are really mitigating stress and protecting that plant, and I hope that attributes to yield in the end.
So, Mike, let's kind of address some of those issues, talking about pest management. He just mentioned gray leaf spot as far as crop diseases, but what about the pests out there? What was really some things that are key takeaways that you saw this year in the year 2018? So
one of the big key take-homes this year that's really resonating with a lot of producers is the use of residual herbicides, layered residuals, to basically decrease the weed seed bank that we have in individual fields. Now that is going to vary depending on where you're at geography-wise, but the utilization of residual herbicides, you can be driving along and basically pick out those fields that utilize those herbicides in that fashion in order to control the problematic driver weeds that we currently have as far as water hemp, palmer, giant ragweed, whatever it may be. The other thing that's important in that system is starting clean. Essentially, if a producer starts dirty, he's going to end dirty. And that's a good general rule of thumb. Yeah, so the pre-emergents are really key to keeping that weed pressure down. So Kyle and Todd, what diseases or weed pressure really did you see? You talked about the gray leaf spot. Todd, I would think yours would be a mess. I'm sorry. You're the good seed, bad seed, I guess. I don't know.
You would be correct. The weeds are obviously the first thing. The conditions to grow a bad corn crop are the same conditions that grow a really good water hemp crop. So that multiple modes of actions, pre-emergence with the post-emergence was really key for us. Then we got through that season. It seems to be coming back now before harvest, but it's too late for that. But then in season, we had diseases and insects. We had corn leaf miner. We had Physoderma brown spot, which I've never heard of, but now it's running rampant in my fields. I don't know what to do about it. So, having that knowledge out there to help me with that is huge, because it just tells me what's next year. If I have two things that I've never heard of being major things this year, what's next? That's why we have to continually monitor that and see what's out there, because last year was perfect for me. I was a Kyle last year, and this year I'm not. So that's just the variability that we have out there.
Well, let's just note, everyone wants to be a Kyle, it seems. So,
yeah.
I think the one thing, Todd hit it on the head when it came to, water hemp is a tremendous weed that we deal with, and multiple modes of action in chemistry was key in that right timing. When I first started, it went from, I was basically considered a Roundup baby, and we used a lot of that. Then we went to using one mode of action, two modes of action. Now I'm using three modes of action in chemistry, and it was important for me to be able to make sure my growers did that, as well as ourselves in our own operation, because I didn't want to be over dependent on whether it was Liberty, whether it was dicamba, because we can still keep a clean field by using all these levels of chemistry, but if we're so reliant on one, we're going to develop resistance on everything. And if we get to that point, we're going to have some real issues going forward.
Mike, are you seeing more and more that farmers are now understanding the importance of that multiple modes of action and scouting? We haven't even got into scouting, how important scouting is too.
Yeah. Scouting is probably one of the lost arts, I think, in our business. The easy button years ago really decreased the emphasis of scouting. Overall, multiple mode of actions, producers are really looking for education opportunities through the winter months. Not only third-party universities, again, a lot of good information online also. Just some of the new pests. There's actually a new one that is creeping up, South Dakota, Nebraska, in western Iowa, the soybean gull midge. So there's a lot of emphasis and a lot of worries about that particular pest for soybean growers right now.
Have you heard of that one, Todd?
No, it's really great.
I bet you got it.
Great news. Yeah, I probably do have it.
So, Todd, let's be a little bit more serious for a minute. There's a lot of high-tech tools out there in the marketplace, and a lot of them are used to help scout for the disease and pest pressure that we've been talking about. Is there really anything out there that's really catching your eye that you think is key that the farmers need to keep an eye on?
Yeah, there's a lot of technologies out there. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of technology just for technology's sake. Obviously, I'm partial to my own technology because I was tired of getting things from Silicon Valley. I don't know how many times I've said, I don't think they've ever shown this to a farmer before. So creating it from the bottom up, asking farmers what they want. We've created tools that are really fast to use, simple to use. I mean, the fewer buttons, the better. We're busy people, so anything out there that imagery pops up fast because we don't have time to wait for it. Things that get to a decision faster, so you don't have to interpret it. So those are the tools that we concentrate on creating just to get adopted and really make it usable for that grower.
So when you talk about the growers and the ease of use, I know that that's something that you and I have talked about a lot. But there's some apps out there that are a little bit more complicated that they do need some help with, and that's kind of in your area, Kyle. I'm going to ask you that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a big part of me trying to create the role that I was looking at within United Prairie and having an innovation agronomy lead, because you're exactly right. We're unbelievably busy, and there's an overwhelming amount of information coming in. And the key to this is efficiency for myself as well as the growers that I work with. So if I can streamline that stuff, get a better idea of what's working, implement it on our own operation first, then I'm going to have the confidence to be able to go out to them and say, hey, I've tested this for the last 2, 3, 4 years. It's going to work on your farm, so let's move forward with it. I mean, it's like this iWatch. I bought this iWatch the other day. I've never had one of these in my life, but what it's done to make me more efficient has been incredible. And it's just little things like that we need to implement, and some guys are fearful of doing that. But just because it puts them in a zone that they're not comfortable in. So if I can be their trusted business partner and make them more comfortable, that's the key.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head. Having a business partner that has your best interest, and I talk with a lot of farmers in a lot of different areas, and some of the technologies, maybe you can kind of back me up or tell me if I'm wrong on this, Todd, but so many of the technologies today are maybe some technologies that some of those experts used in the past, but now they're able to share that directly with the customer and say, hey, I've been out scouting in your field and I just happened to notice this, and so you drop a pin somewhere, you shoot them a picture or whatever, and so they know exactly that you're in their field, you're checking it out, but that's saving them time and money too.
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing when you talk about dropping pins is that you take ownership in that observation that you make. And the nice part, we use climate a lot on our farm at home, and your GPS wherever you go. So if I'm going to send something to a customer, he sees that I'm out in the middle of the field. He said, well, Kyle's hadn't just stopped, went in 2 rows, looked and see what's going on, and moved on to the next guy. I'm physically out there getting the job done. Same thing with the drone technology. The drone technology is showing us things in that field that, be realistic, we're not going to walk to it. But we need to know what's going on, and we need to know how to identify it and come up with a solution if there's an issue.
Todd, on your farm, how do you know what thing to address first? I mean, we've talked about, numerous subjects, so as testing, scouting, variable rate applications. How do you know how to prioritize all of that? Or do you have to do it all at once?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. While we're always monitoring all these decisions at once, it comes down to technology tools. It's just like someone working in an office. If we have a to-do list and organizational tools to kind of prioritize what we want, and then we put different technologies in that, whether it's a tool like my company or Kyle using climate or whatever it may be. We take bits and pieces of that and kind of, we either put that higher on the list or lower on that list depending on what we're seeing out in the field. So it's very fluid. I told someone this morning, the best thing I do is I don't plan, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen next week. But I need the tools out there to continually monitor what's going on, whether it's weather or my fertility or my scouting, So when that decision comes, I have to do it extremely quickly. So that's the technologies that I'm looking for. And to kind of back up the question you had last time, it's that technology has to fit in with relationships. We have those trusted relationships, and it's not right for these companies to come in and try to disrupt that relationship that we've had for 200 years. So getting the knowledge of the human along with technology, that's how I make decisions.
And you've keyed in on a number of times. It has to be easy to use, but I think back, and I'm the oldest one on the panel, we all know that, and I think back to the time when it sounded great. We didn't know what it was going to do for us, but boy, we went out and bought it. We didn't know how to use it, and really nobody knew how to use it. So let's talk about, again, I'm coming back to you. How do you, or Kyle, how do you know what's going to work right on your farm? And again, is it those relationships you just talked about?
I think technology is really not that different from a new fungicide or a herbicide. We all do on-farm trials. We see our retailers do on-farm trials. They're testing new products, so make sure you get with those experts, the suppliers, and they're getting that technology generally before it comes to the field. So if you have a good relationship, see if it works for them. Try it on your farm. It's, don't jump both feet in, head first all the time, because there's a lot of technologies that don't work, and that's the issue with trying to sort through them. But we all know that we need those tools, so it's worth trying them out. But try them like you would, on 40 acres, like you would a new fungicide, and then next year, if it works, go big.
All right, now you've thrown it over into Kyle's area of specialty is plots. You do a lot of plots with customers and on your own farms. So let's talk a little bit more about those on-farm trials, but I want to get back to the ROI aspect. I want to get back to what made the difference in your bottom line on your farm or other people's farms that you help.
Yeah, I mean, I think Todd hit it. When you need to work with that trusted business partner, better understand it. And I'm the kind of guy that I'm going to do a lot all at once. We get one time a year to do this, and we're running through hybrids and varieties so quickly each and every year. I need to know as much information as I possibly can about it. And for me, taking it to either our own operation or growers I work with, I need information coming from me. And I can go to Bayer and they can show me their products, and their products are always going to be good. Same with BASF, Monsanto. I need third-party data to really be able to verify on our own operation. So, I've continued to do that. A couple key things that I'm doing this year is I'm comparing multiple fungicides on our operation, looking from a high rate, low rate usage, better understanding. Can I put a higher rate of fungicide on at one time, stretch out my residual, and that's going to take me longer through the growing season rather than making multiple applications. Then I'm following that up with, I need a better understanding of test weight, what's going on. That's the number one thing at our crop tours in Illinois right now is we're seeing good yields, but everyone wants to know what that corn crop's going to weigh. So I'm physically going out in the fields, going our plots, pulling hybrids, shelling ears, weighing all those kernels out, and trying to get a prelude of what yield could potentially be. And if that's one piece of the puzzle that we can do going forward, then I want to be on the front end of that.
How many, with all the products and the options out there for inputs in the marketplace, how should growers really decide what kind of trials you're going to try? You just said you like to do them all. I got news for you. My farmers, when I used to be in the business, they're not going to do them all.
But to me, that's my job, is to do them all and then take them to key pieces and components that I pull out after I process all that data and say, you don't need to do all these things, but let's correct one thing. If anything I've learned in the 13, 14 years of being in the retail side of things, I can't always go to a guy and say, hey, let's put 40 acres of fungicide on and it's going to work every time. It may work on our own operation, but you got to look back through their whole operation, understand from the foundation of soil testing up. Go back to the Liebig's Law of the minimum. There could be a stave in that barrel that's lower, and that's preventing you from achieving your top end. So we got to fix that issue before we can really move forward, and that's my goal, is to help them do that.
Mike, I haven't addressed some things with you here in a while, but let's talk about how the growers select products. Again, tight margins out there. It might be tempting to the farmers to really say, well, I don't think I'm going to do that this year, or cut some of their input costs. So is that always the best thing to do? And how should a grower really decide where to cut back, and if he even needs to? What's the benefit that he's going to get?
Yeah, great question. So First of all, as far as which products to pick, education is probably one of the biggest keys that I have growers go through. Anytime that you're able to get information, either at a meeting, a university, a manufacturer, online, whatever else, to basically make that best decision for you. Of course, as Bayer, we have a very wide portfolio. We have a lot of options, but just being unique in order to have more of an educational-based program, that's really what we're thoughtful of as far as education on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do they know whether it's going to make them profitable or not, or what they're going to cut back on? I mean, that's the big thing. Education is the key.
Yep.
But then again, do you come back to some of the trials on the farms? Is that how you're getting your data, that you're really able to give them some guidance in? Well, you know,
Yep.
based on this year, based on this weather, based on where you live.
Yeah, great question. As far as the return on investment, really a grower has to look at his whole farm, you know, as far as a system approach. Sometimes the easy thing to do is to cut an input here or there. Generally speaking, with our weed seed bank that we have created throughout the U.S. right now, it's really difficult for that weed management side to cut the cost out of the herbicide end. So there's other ways of cutting some of that cost. A lot of guys will go to the fertilizer, whatever it is, but we have to be careful because we're trying to feed and take care of that plant for basically 4.5 months, 5 months in a year. So it's a living organism out there, and you want to make sure it's fed well and done well. So cutting costs is usually not the way to prosperity, so to speak.
What about you guys? You got any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, commodity prices is obviously a very emotional thing for growers, but we have to remember plants don't care. They don't care if corn is $7 or $2. Crop protection products don't care about the commodity prices. If there's a 3x ROI at $7, there's still a 3x return at $2. So be very careful about cutting costs. I know it's very tempting, and I would never tell another grower not to do that if that's what he wants to do, but just try to take the emotion out of it and remember that those plants really don't care.
How about you? Anything to add to that?
I think he hit that. I agree with that completely. It is an emotional attachment. When I'm selling bushels right now, I'm sitting there wondering, gosh darn it, I don't want to, I need to. I try to take some of that emotion out of it with marketing programs and working with local elevators and just saying, hey, you market 25-30% of my bushels, that way I just don't have to worry about it. I'm going to focus on what I'm good at with understanding that crop. And I look forward to the days when we're going to be able to basically, I'm going to look at my watch or I'm going to look at my phone, and we're going to be wired into that plant, and we're going to fully understand what's going on day in and day out, because the goal in the end is I don't want to have a bad day, and I don't want that plant to have a bad day. So let's not let that happen. Cutting costs can really create that and create an animal you can't recover from.
All right. Well, I think we're getting right down to what I call the lightning round, and this is where I want to just keep taking it back, because that's what we're talking about, is the agronomics and the return on investment and how we can really help these guys out in the audience be more profitable. So just tell me in a minute or two, let's leave growers with one piece of advice about how to make the best agronomic decisions on their farm next season. Todd?
So I think when I look at even 20...
Or Kyle.
Did you look at me or me?
I looked at you and I called you Todd. That's all right. Go ahead.
I'm very confused.
It's all good.
So when I look at 2018 and even the key takeaway from it and going forward, or as growers and all, micromanage your operation to some extent, because it's really easy to get complacent and say, okay, I live in pretty soils that are pretty even base. I'm going to same seed, 2 or 3 hybrids, 2 or 3 varieties, same nitrogen program, same chemical program year in and year out. That's not always what we need to do. I mean, I try to look at every piece of our operation and understand that the ground that we farm here cannot be treated like what it is over here. And I micromanage it to some extent, because not all things are created equal. And for us to continue to stay profitable and ahead of our competition, we're going to have to work harder. And I don't want to be afraid to work, and I don't think anybody out there should be afraid of it as well.
All right. Now, how about you, Todd?
Are you done, Kyle? All right. I think it's just don't forget about those plants out there. We tend to try to plant as fast as possible, then we try to spray as fast as possible, then we try to harvest as fast as possible. There's a lot of stuff going on in between there where the true agronomic decisions are made, and those are the ones that we probably forget about because it's not very much fun to walk out into that field, make those decisions. So we tend to just kind of drive past fast or not pay attention because that ugly water hemp or those whatever those things are coming to Minnesota. So pay attention to your fields, get back out there, and make better decisions in season.
Got to get in the fields to know what's going on in the fields, right? How about you, Mike? One takeaway from.
So I think the big takeaway is look at a integrated management response to whatever the issue is. Everybody wants that one silver bullet to take care of pests out there. We have to look at it integrated, both cultural practices, either a variety selection, row spacing, whatever it may be, along with mechanical. There's going to be times that mechanical is going to be involved to alleviate maybe a particular pest or to alleviate an issue, and then your chemical side. So look at your operation as an integrated approach and not looking for the easy button. That's probably my go-to message. It's getting more complex, and it's not going to get any simpler going forward.
You know, I always think about when I worked with Ken Ferry and some of the things that he would tell me, and never let your corn have a bad day. Yep. But what you just said is so key to that whole thing is that you've got to be paying attention not only to herbicides, pesticides, seed. It's the mechanics of it too. And like you said, when you're going, how much yield can you lose by just not having a picket row stance? Up to like 7 bushels an acre in corn. I mean, that's a huge thing. Just because you're going too fast or whatever, you're not paying attention to what you are. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. It's really been good to share your insights. We're going to open it up to the audience. If you have any questions out there, it's a great time to get an expert opinion about some subjects that we've been talking about today. So anybody have any questions out there? You guys did a good job. How about
entertaining?
Entertaining. Well, we try to be. I'm going to just open it up and ask about nitrogen. Nitrogen is what most farmers, when I was an editor, that's what they always wanted to talk about. So nitrogen's always a tough one. How to apply enough or not too much, or how do you see the current best practices as far as nitrogen application? Are we getting any closer to figuring this thing out, Kyle?
So you want me to go?
I'm talking to you.
Okay, so I'm going to go. I think we are. I've learned a lot on our own operation in the last 5 years of really, used to do 1.2 is the most you should do. That's 1.2 pounds of N per bushel. And we're probably down to 0.7, 0.8 pounds of nitrogen per bushel. But I'm also in a different area. We're fortunate enough when the glaciers went through many, many years ago, they deposited some of probably the best soils in the world in Central Illinois. So for me, in looking at our nitrogen program, it's number one, looking at a soil test, understanding my cation exchange capacity, my holding capacity of my soil, and then building my program from there. Whether it's some of our farms, we're going down with a pre-plant 32, coming back with side dress. Some of them we're going 3 forms of nitrogen with ammonia 32 and side dress. The one key component for us at home is the side dress. That is my last application from nitrogen in the season, and I can directly, either raise or lower that number based on what I'm seeing right now in the field. And as we go forward and start doing Y drops, we're doing more of that on our farm. That even gives me a later opportunity to potentially not necessarily put more unless if necessary, but maybe reduce it some. So.
Yeah, how about you, Todd? What about nitrogen on your farm? I know you don't have any left, but, it's been a tough year.
Yeah, I think nitrogen stabilizer is probably the best thing I ever did this year. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all for nitrogen. I mean, my management practice with narrow row corn is different what Kyle would do in Illinois. I think that's the key is to find a program that fits in your system that has the biggest results. And we shouldn't forget that we're using less nitrogen than we did in the past, and we're producing twice as many bushels. So yes, we figured it out. Is there a long ways to go? Yes, obviously. We're going to get more tools with, better hybrids and biologicals coming down the road, but we've come a long ways, and we always don't get credit for what we've done. So I think it's pretty impressive how much we produce now with what we have, and that's because we are good at making those systems that work for each of us in different areas.
So I think nitrogen, for an example, 10 years ago, it was probably unheard of as far as spoon feeding your crop. Just the technology as far as equipment of getting that nitrogen on in a timely fashion, spoon feeding, that is the most critical point that I've really seen change in nutrient management overall, probably the last 10 years, is just the concept versus the fall typical application of anhydrous ammonia, one shot all, versus a spoon feed. I think the producers that have really looked at nutrient management very well and closely are the ones that are really succeeding.
I'm going to ask a question. I might have kind of addressed it a little bit before, but I'm going to do it a little bit different. So as you've gotten through the 2018, you already know pretty much what your crops are, you're hoping them to be. What are you seeing that really is different this year than last year? And then how are you going to use that information next year? What's it going to show you? What's it going to create differences in next year? Or is it going to be the same?
If you can tell me what next year's going to be, I'll pay you a lot of money. There's lots. It's not just this year for me. It's compiling multi-years of data. And again, to reiterate what I said earlier, seeing a trend line of really the products that have continued to work year in and year out, and understanding when I need to implement those and at what timings. With the disease pressure we faced at the last part of this season, I can't say that I'm going to see that next year, but I'm sure going to have the tools to know that if this comes in again to this level, that I can change it.
All right, I'm going to have to thank our panel. I do have an emergency situation. They are evacuating the Farm Progress Show. Everyone in this building right now, I'm going to speak a little bit louder. If you would make your way to the exits, they are wanting you to leave. Please listen to me on the microphone. We're going to go ahead and exit out the exits very orderly. This is not a joke. We need to go ahead and leave in the exits. They're asking everyone to evacuate Farm Progress Show. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Guys, hey.